Now, we've got a 60-year-old individual. This is a very simplified scenario. Keep in mind, this is very baseline and very simplified. And we're asking ourselves, how much do we need to retire at 60? Well, there's two things that we think about when we're thinking, how much do I need to retire at 60? The first, we think about the 25X rule. The 25X rule says, take your annual expenses, multiply those by 25, and that's how much you need to retire at whatever age. And for this example, it's going to be at 60. So we take 25, we multiply it by $50,000. That's our annual expenses for this example. That means we need $1.25 million to retire at 60. Now, what the 25X rule does not take into account is Social Security, pensions, and inflation. Now, we're going to take into account Social Security for this example, and we're going to take into account a very simplified look at inflation. We're going to get into more detail in the next video. But for this scenario, we're only going to look at a simplified version of inflation. So $1.25 million is what this individual needs saved for retirement to retire at 60, maybe. We're also going to think about how long do we want to be in retirement. And now that's a funny question. How long are you going to live after you retire? No one knows, right? So we have to put a asterisk by that question, and we have to say, how long do you want to live after retirement? For this example, we're going to use 100. So we're going to go from 60 to 100. For 40 years, we're going to be in retirement. So we've got to plan for 40 years of retirement income. So that's where the 25X rule kind of falls short, because it's not calculating in inflation, Social Security, and longevity. So again, very simplified, 25X rule. How long are we going to live? 1.25 million. Social Security at 67. How much do we need? So let's look at this. And I want to do it in sections. The first section is going to be 60 to 67. So we're 60 years old. We've got $50,000 in expenses, and we're going to 67. That's when we're going to claim Social Security at our full retirement age. So we're going to get $2,800 at 67. If this individual were to go to 70, we need to look from 60 to 70. They'd get 124% of their full retirement benefit for Social Security, and we'd have to change how much we need saved. Now, again, we're going to earn 6% rate of return in the market. Now, in order to get this calculation, I use an HB2 Plus calculator. It's a future value calculator. You can find these calculators on Google or in Excel, and you can do this for yourself. So between the ages of 60 and 67, based on the future value calculation, this individual needs $285,175 saved for retirement. Now, that is essentially at 67 having $0 left. I think it was like 50 cents left over at age 67. So it's not my recommendation to get the least amount. I just want to show you where we need to start. So 60 to 67, $285,175 is the least amount that this individual needs saved for retirement to satisfy their expenses. Now, we haven't factored in inflation. Let me show you a simple way to factor in inflation. We take the $50,000 in expenses, and we just multiply that by inflation. So I like to use 3%. So 3.24 is the 108-year average for inflation. So I'm just going to use 3% as a round number. So 50,000 times 3%, that's $1,500. So we're going to take that $1,500, we're going to multiply that by 7. Okay, so we multiply that by 7, that's 10,500. So we're going to say 50,000 times that by 0.03, that's $1,500. That's our inflation for each year. We're going to multiply that by 10. Now, keep in mind, inflation is a compound number. So if you want to get even more detailed, again, this is a very simplified scenario. If you want to get even more detailed, do this on a yearly basis. So take 50,000, multiply that by 0.03, then take that number, which would be 51,500, multiply that by 0.03. You can do this in Excel, and that'll give you inflation for those 7 years. But for this, we're going to make it very simplified. So we take 1,500, we're going to multiply that by 10, that gives us 10,500. So we're going to add that to this 285. So 10,500 goes here. So add that to 285,175. That means we need at least $295,675 from ages 60 to 67 for inflation and for our retirement expenses. So now let's do the same thing. We got to go 67 to 100. So we got to go a long time. Our expenses have inflated to $61,493. So that's $50,000 inflated at 3% between 60 and 67. We're going to start taking Social Security. So $33,600 is going to be our annual Social Security. So that means on an annual basis, $27,893 is going to have to come off of our retirement investing accounts, which comes to $2,324 per month. So that's what we need to live off of. So using a future value calculation, we need $400,379. Now, again, let's talk about inflation. Take the $61,493, multiply that by 3. That's 18, so multiply that by 3%. That's $1,844. Now, let's multiply that number by 33 because we got 33 years, right? So from 70 to 100 is 30, plus 3 is 33. So that's $60,878. We have to add to this figure for inflation. So plus 400,379, we need at least $461,257. So that's the least amount with inflation added in. So we take it all together, 461,257, 295,675. Let's add those up together. 295,675. That means $756,932 is the least amount we need to retire at 60. Now we're going to get more detailed in this next section in the next video, so make sure you watch to the end or watch the next video. But the least amount we need is $756,932, calculating in Social Security and inflation on a simplified metric. Now, again, I like to do a financial EKG. That's what we do here. It's called a Your Financial EKG to make sure that this is enough. The EKG also calculates in other variables that we can't do on the board, like taxes, like sequence of return risk, like historical market returns, and big purchases or things you want to spend your money on, like travel, maybe a child's wedding, a new car, whatever, a home purchase. We can't calculate that in on the board. You would lose your mind. So we have to do that in the software. But if you're asking, can I retire at 60? How much do I need saved? $756,000 is a good place to start.